I love to ski, and my mom, when I was pretty young, how old do you think I was when I went on skis? 5, 6, 7. Yeah, I was young when she put me on skis. And so I've been doing it my whole life, and I've never taken a break except for when I lived away at college. And so, like, I like to think I'm pretty good. And the truth is, when I'm out skiing, no one else on the mountain knows this, but I'm racing against every single one of them. And I am definitely the fastest. Like, there is no question. And I'm not, like, now, like, all the other people do, like, flips and jumps and rails and stuff like that. I didn't grow up with that. I'm all about that speed. I wanna go fast. Ricky Bobby. And so I'm like gunning it. I'm like gunning it down the hill, the steepest runs, the tallest runs, as fast as I can. And so, like, I normally ski by myself because no one can keep up. And and so I am inherently racing against everyone else, but I've never actually raced, like, growing up in Pittsburgh doesn't exactly put you on a race team. But maybe 2 seasons ago, there was this guy who I know, and he is awesome, and he did not grow up here, and he grew up ski racing. Like, the whole way through high school, and I think even in college, he was like a ski racer, like on a team, and he's so good. He's so good. And so we're like out together, and I'm like, this is awesome. And so we went to the steepest, the fastest run that we have at the mountain we were at, and we go to the top, and we didn't like agree to race, but we were racing, and we both just gun it. I mean, like, we gun it as hard as we can. And I'm like full send, full throttle, everything I got the whole way down. And he is like, we're just right next to each other the whole time. And I'm like, he was like a real ski racer, and I'm like playing with my skis, as a kid. And we're running down, and I'll tell you what, we got to the bottom of that slope, and I edged him out by a hair, and we got to the bottom of that. I'm like, this feeling came over me, like, I am the greatest. I am the best. There has never been a skier like me. And this like feeling of validation just came over me. Like, I have been out here pretending to race against everyone and anyone, and now I actually race against someone, and I'm fast, I think that for every single human being, there is a need inside of us for validation. Validation. And here's what I mean by validation. I mean that we need to feel like our feelings and our thoughts and our personhood is worthwhile, that it's significant, that it matters, that what we think and our uniqueness, that it matters. And we have this need for validation, and I do not believe that this need for validation is a fluke. I believe that God actually created us with that need. But the problem that we all experience is that we live in a very broken world, and relationships are broken, but the most important relationship of all, our relationship with our Creator, is inherently broken. It's inherently broken. And so when we come into this world, we're coming into a world that is far from God's original intent and original design. And we were created to exist in perfect intimacy and in perfect love with a perfect Father. And I've been talking the last couple weeks about the Father and his love and his heart. And we were made for that perfect relationship with the perfect Father. Well, that relationship is all jacked up, right? And even those of you who've been believers for a long time, we're all still on a journey trying to figure out how to make that relationship what our soul really needs it to be, and what ultimately he wants it to be and intended for it to be. And so we have broken relationships with each other, broken relationships with our Father, and so we have this need for validation, and we don't really get it the way we were supposed to get it. And what that does is that causes us to go down a journey of life that honestly becomes super dysfunctional. Because when we don't have the validation that we need from our Father, we look for it from all kinds of other sources. And so we project that need for validation onto anyone and everything. And for some of us, it's like we live our whole lives feeling like we gotta prove something. Like, I gotta prove that I'm the best skier because then I'll feel good about myself, right? I gotta prove that I'm lovable. So for some guys, it's like, I'm gonna sleep with as many girls as I possibly can because I need the validation of that. For some of us, it's like, I need to be successful and earn a certain amount of money because then I'll feel like my thoughts and my feelings and my opinions and my personhood is worthwhile or valuable or significant. But the problem is that when we live our whole lives trying to prove something about ourselves, it eats our souls alive and it eats our relationships alive. And here's the shocker. There's never enough validation in this world. Because the truth is, I raced against my friend, but there's at least 20 million people who can race faster than I can. And so it never really meets the need. So King David, who in the Old Testament is the best example of someone who knew intimately the love of God and the love of the Father, he wrote this psalm and he was singing it to God, and these were actually song lyrics. And he was a musician and he wrote this song to God. And I love the intimacy that he experienced with God that he articulates in this psalm. He says, "You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is even on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me." And what that means is that it's like, if you were sewing a piece of fabric and you were putting like a hem on the bottom of it, you hem me in behind and before. It's like you sewed me into the hem. Like you're all around me. You're in front of me, you're behind me, you're around me, you surround me, your hand is on me. And then he stops and he says, "Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain." And so David starts off the song by saying, "You know me." Like you know every detail about me. You know every word, every thought. There is nothing in me, in my mind, in my heart, nothing that I do that you don't already know about. And that's an important place to start because David is saying, you know all the good, all the bad. I'm not hiding anything from you. Even if I tried to hide something from you, it would be a joke because you know it all anyways. And he goes on for a few verses and essentially says that. It's like, I could go down to hell and you'd still know I was there. I could go to heaven, you'd know I was there. I could go the east, I could go anywhere, and you would still know that I was there. You know everything about me. And this is important because there is nobody on earth that knows you that well. And so David's like, do you know who the one person is that knows the real me? You do. And then he says, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together even in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, and I know that full well." So David starts and he's like, you know everything there is to know about me. And then he jumps the script and he says, you're actually the one that made me. Like when I was in my mother's womb, you were crafting me. You were putting me together. You were designing me. You know every single detail about me. And then he says this, and this is something that we need to understand. He says, and what you made is wonderful. And then he says what I think most of us fail to say. And I know it. I don't know it a little bit, I know it the whole way. What you made was, I was fearfully and wonderfully made. What do you mean fearfully? What that means, especially in the Hebrew in which this was written, it doesn't mean that God was afraid when he made you. It means that there was awe and reverence when he made you. Like what he was making was so good, so beautiful, so wonderful that even God himself was in awe as he created every detail of who you were. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All my days were ordained for me, written in your book before one of them even came to be. And then listen to this, verse 17. And some of you need to take a picture of this verse and make it your phone screen background, or write it on your dashboard, or put it somewhere where you're gonna remember it. He says, how precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. And when I awake, I'm still with you. How precious are your thoughts about me? I couldn't even count them all. Here's what's so good about what David was saying. David was saying, I received the validation that I needed before I did anything. You know everything that I did, everything I say, everything I'm about to say, you know all of that. But your validation of me wasn't attached to what I did or what I said or how I behaved or how I acted. You didn't wait to see if I could win the race. You didn't wait to see whether or not I could make the money. You didn't wait to see whether or not I could remain pure. You didn't wait to see whether or not I'd make the right choices. You didn't wait for my performance or my behavior. You validated me when I was still in my mother's womb. And I wasn't validated because of who I am. I was validated because who you are, and the fact that I am your creation in and of itself gave me significance and value and worth and importance. And this, let me tell you, this is the truth that our society has rejected. And as a result, we are all kinds of dysfunction as human beings because we don't trace our identity back to a loving Father who lovingly created us with love in his heart. And so because we don't know that, we don't know who we are, and we spend our lives demanding validation and significance from anyone and anything. The validation and the significance that I need, because I was made to need it, the significance and validation that I need was meant to be satisfied through intimacy with the Father. That's where it comes from. It starts there. It starts there, which means I don't need to live my whole life trying to prove something about who I am. I don't need to prove myself to you. I don't need to prove myself to the general public. I don't need to prove myself to my friends. I don't need to impress you. I don't need to perform for you, because my validation and my significance came from him. The problem is, none of us come into the world thinking that. We come into the world with a broken relationship between us and the Father, and a broken understanding about who we are and what he says about us. And so here's what that does. That leaves us with certain needs that fester and needs that show up in dysfunctional ways. And one of those dysfunctions is this. Number one, my need to impress people. We enter the world and it's like, I need to impress you because I don't feel important unless you're impressed by who I am. The second one is the need to prove that I'm good enough, strong enough, or lovable enough. I need it because I need people to pay attention to me. I need people to like me on Instagram. I need people to, throw themselves at me. I need people to want to go on dates with me. Like, I need that, but it's not because I want to love people. It's because I don't feel like I'm lovable to begin with. And I need you to fix that for me. And guess what? They can't fix it for you because they're also dysfunctional. My need to impress people, my need to be good enough, and my need to prove my significance. What I say matters. Who I am matters. Well, does it matter? Yeah. But we were not meant to ask the question whether or not it matters and then demand that the world around us answer it for us. We were made to find that first in our Father. But when we don't get validation from the Father, we live our lives trying to prove ourselves, demanding validation from everybody else. And we have a really weird thing happening in our society today where we are demanding society validate us. Like, it's not just I need like my mom to validate me or my dad to validate me, or I need a spouse to validate me or a boyfriend or a girlfriend to validate. It's not, I need all of the world to validate me. And that's caused cancel culture. It's caused political polarization. It's caused a lot of hate to take over in our world. I need you to validate me. Why? Why? Why do I care? Why do I care what people who I don't know think about who I am? Well, the reason why I care about that is because I don't have security in who I am. And that's because the world can't give it. Does the world mistreat people? Yes. Does the world make people feel unimportant? Yes, because it's massively dysfunctional. But the truth is, real significance and real validation can only come from a perfect Father. But what happens is when we don't know that, and then we demand the world to answer that for us, the world never really gives it the whole way. Like, there'll never be enough validation from the world to really satisfy your need. And so when we don't get the validation that we need from the world around us, we have two options. One is I become bitter. Like, I just become an angry person, demanding something from everybody, unhappy about the fact that no one lives up to my expectations, no one fulfills my needs, and the world at large doesn't give me what I deserve. And so I live my whole life angry. The second option is I live my whole life weak, never really believing in myself, never really believing that I have anything good to bring to the world. And when I believe that I'm weak, I retreat back into coping mechanisms and codependencies, which do not offer validation. They only make the need for validation get worse. Because codependencies don't solve the problem, they exacerbate the problem. And coping mechanisms don't provide the validation, they provide temporary relief from validation. And then on the other side of using the coping mechanism, the narrative that you're a piece of trash only gets louder. You guys know what I'm talking about. Why? Why do I retreat back into coping mechanisms and codependencies? Why do I live my life angry at the world? Why do I live my life believing that I'm weak? It's because I don't have the validation I need from my Father. That's why. And let me tell you, men, you were not made to be weak. Women, you were not made to be codependent. I know that's a bit of a generalization because men and women can be on the other side of that too. But the truth is there's a narrative that's been told to men in our society today that you should be weak and that you shouldn't use your voice, and that if you act in strength, you'll only cause damage. But that's a lie about who you are. And I want to see men set free from that so we can be the strong men that we were made to be for our families and for the world around us. But in order to be strong, in order for us not to be bitter, in order for us to not have unmet demands, we have to find validation from our Father. But our relationship with God can get complicated, right? Our relationship with God can get complicated. Because the truth is, some of us don't know how to receive what God wants to give to us. And a lot of us have a hard time believing that God will give us his validation. Because we grew up in religion, and religion essentially teaches us that God will not give you validation unless you perform perfectly. I mean, that's the premise of religion. Unless you perform at exactly the right standard, you won't get validation from God. That's clearly not what David believed. David believed that validation was given to him in the womb. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made because you made me. It wasn't based on my performance, it was based on your design. It wasn't based on my behavior, it was based on your intent, your love, your closeness, the fact that you stitched me together with your fingers and with your mind. You created me exactly the way you wanted me to be. But because a lot of us have a hard time trusting God to give us that validation, we have a rocky relationship with God where we feel like one day God's close to us, the other day God's mad at us. One day God's near, the other day God's far, and what do I need to do to prove to him that he ought to show up and be close to me again, right? So when I don't believe that I have the Father's validation, my relationship with God will be based on my ability to prove myself to him. And honestly, some of you came to church today because you're trying to prove something to God, because you're trying to earn his validation. I'm glad you're here, but that's not how it works. And then you run that down the rabbit trail. No one's ever good enough. No one's ever perfect enough. No one's ever holy enough. No one ever lives up to the right standard. And then we go through difficult things in life and we look at God, who we don't really trust to give us validation, and we're like, you must be really mad at me today because my tire blew out, or I didn't get the job, or the girl broke up with me, or I got the pay decrease, or that person betrayed me. And you're like, God, what the heck? You're not living up to my expectations. You're not coming through for me. And it feeds this narrative that he isn't really happy with you to begin with because you didn't perform good enough, you didn't achieve good enough, you didn't win the race enough times. And then, what are you gonna do with that problem? Well, you're gonna decide either there's something wrong with me or there's something wrong with him. He must be a mean God, a bad God, an unloving God, or I must be a total piece of trash that he doesn't actually want to bless. And you know what that does? It creates this problem of distrust. I don't really trust him because I'm not sure whether or not he's good, because I've seen some things happen in life that have not been good, and I think he wanted it to go that way. So I can't really trust him. Why don't I trust him? Because again, I never really got validation from him. So when God doesn't live up to our expectations, I'll either believe there's something wrong with me or there's something wrong with him, creating a gap of distrust between us. And that right there is exactly where the enemy wants you to be. He doesn't want you to trust him. Do you know why he doesn't want you to trust him? Because as long as you don't trust him, you can't receive validation from him. And as long as you can't receive validation from him, you're gonna be dysfunctional. So what does God say? Well, 1 Peter chapter 2, God's talking about us, and he's like, here's how I see you. You are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation. You are God's special possession, that you might declare the praise of him who called you out of darkness, out of darkness and into his wonderful light. Once you were not a people. In other words, once you didn't have an identity. You didn't know who you were. You had lots of questions about who you were and what it meant to be you. But now you're not that way anymore because you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. And that last line is so important because what Peter is saying, he's saying, don't you know who you are? You're his special possession. You're his. You're precious to him because you've received mercy. In other words, you are not special to him because you performed at the right standard. No, in fact, you didn't perform at the right standard. You didn't win the race. You weren't good enough. You didn't come to church enough times. You screwed up. You sinned. And here's the beautiful thing. And he gave you grace. Why? Because he loves you. So my confidence cannot be built on my achievement. It can only be built on his grace. My security can't be built on my ability to prove myself. It can only come from his grace. His grace, his grace, his grace, his grace, his grace. Why does he love you? Grace. Why is he for you? Grace. Why does he think good thoughts about you? Grace. Why did he call you special? Grace. Why does he call you precious? Grace. Why does he say you're fearfully and wonderfully made? Grace. Why does he love you today? Grace. Why is he showing up for you tomorrow? Grace. It's not about you, it's about him. It's not about your performance, it's about his character. And then what happens is when people understand the radical nature of his grace, they can receive his validation. Does he validate all my decisions? No, he validates me. Does he validate the times that I make the wrong choice? No, he doesn't validate dysfunctional behavior. He validates me. And when I know that he validates me, it makes me whole and confident and secure and strong. And instead of causing dysfunction to be replicated through my life and influence, it causes wholeness to be replicated through my life and influence. And you have to understand that his validation of you is not based on your performance. It's based on his choice to love you, his choice to give you grace. But the beautiful thing is that when you know you have the Father's validation, you create security for the people in your world. Hey, fathers, your kids need to receive validation from you. Mothers, your kids need to receive validation from you. But you can't give it if you don't have it from the Father. Ultimately, we've got to find it in him. Worship team, the Passion translation of that same verse, it says, his preciousness is imparted to you. And then go ahead, skip down to the next one. You are God's chosen treasure. Priests who are kings, a spiritual nation set apart as God's devoted ones. He called you out of darkness to experience his marvelous light. And now he claims you as his very own. He did this so that you would broadcast his glorious wonders throughout the world. Come and see a God who loves people who don't deserve it. Come and see a God who chooses people who no one else would choose. Come and see a God who would use people who are broken and imperfect. Come and see a God who loves us anyway. Does that mean that God is cool with every decision you make? No. And in fact, a lot of us have dysfunctional patterns of living and thinking that need to be unlearned and changed. But it doesn't get transformed through our effort. It gets transformed through our choice to yield to his love, to yield to his grace, to yield to his word, to yield to the intent and desire of his heart. But it's not hard to yield to somebody who you know is gonna love you no matter what. Some of you, listen to me, are in dysfunctional relationships today because you're looking for validation. And you've entered into codependencies and coping mechanisms. You've believed false things about who you are because those false things, they seem to get you the validation and significance that you're craving. But the truth is, what your Father has for you can fix all of that. It can heal all of that. And so my invitation to you today is this: come and yield to what the Father says. Come and yield to the Father's design. Come and yield to the Father's intent for you. Can we close our eyes for a minute? Would you just do a search of your heart and just say, where am I looking for validation and significance? Where am I taking that need? Some of you have some deep wounds in your heart because you never got it from your earthly father. Some of you have some wounds in your heart because your spouse never really lived up to your expectations. Some of you just feel weak because you've never really felt like you were allowed to be powerful. Some of you are indignant because the world hasn't given you what you've demanded it give. And right now, in this moment, Holy Spirit is here. The love of the Father is here. And he's saying, I got what you need. I got what you need. And so I just want you to say from your heart, I receive your validation, Father. I receive your validation. So Lord, thank you for releasing your love over this room right now. Thank you for filling our hearts with your smile, with your pride. Thank you for reminding us that we are your treasure, that you call us precious. Thank you, Lord. We receive it, God. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. I know that full well. I know that full well.